it is what it, because see,
Do the other professors not hold them to that same?
it's hard to say.
Oh.
It's hard to say, but I get this every semester. I remember it was actually I have one student who, it was a year ago in the fall. It was the 240 for the jacket and the skirt class. You know, there are some fashion students who think that all they have to do is have a good ideas, and he didn't really. And he thought he was all that, and and I'm like, okay, dude, I have not seen any work. And I'm getting a little nervous because, it's due on the last day, because that was when we were in person. And so he's hanging out with the other kids who were like not really doing anything. So, sure enough, the last day, he comes to the door and he says, "Can I speak to you out in the hall?" So yeah, it's like, well, it was some, nonsense, whatever, I couldn't get it done. And I said, okay, so what you're asking for me to create more work for myself because you couldn't arrange your time. And he just like, well, I said, that is what's happening here, and I'm not interested in doing that. So you turn in what you have, and you take whatever grade you get, or you get an F. It's just that simple.
So I think I have taught both at the college level and in law school, and I see that a lot too. And I think they learn that in high school, because a lot of kids would come to me and say, well, where's the extra credit? Or my teacher in high school always used to let me do this. And so I think they learn bad habits, and then you have to crack down on them.
Yeah. So yeah, so he he went away, and there was another young lady who didn't get it done, and she said, and she had this accent, she had like her hand on it. She said, so what are my options here? I said, your options are to take the F and take the class over. And she was like, I guess she thought I was gonna like try to work with her. I'm like, this is not a negotiation. I was very clear on the first class and going forward. So I got the young man in the class this last fall with the online, and we had videos every week. It wasn't like they had to remember it or take notes. They had videos every week. So again, about the same time, I started hearing, well, I don't know if I can get things done and blah, blah, blah. And, and he's like, oh, my family has COVID. I said, okay, stop right there. Reputations are cumulative. And about this same time last year in this same class, you had another reason or excuse for not getting it done. And so, you either need to get it done or you need to withdraw from the class. Next Monday is the last the last thing. And he said, well, I think I can start cutting out the jacket this weekend. I said, dude, you should have started cutting out the jacket 6 weeks ago. So yes, it's just one of those things that I just think back to, this is just when I was a kid. It never occurred to me to turn it in late. It just didn't, but maybe there were those people when I was in college. I just wasn't paying attention to them because I was just too damn busy. So anyway, this is, there's like this whole pile of emails in my email box this morning about why they couldn't or whatever. So it's like, so, you're not doing this for a grade. So it's okay. Okay.
We're not going to get F's next week, huh?
So, so kind of where we're going.
Although I would gladly repeat the class because I'm learning so much.
Well,
yeah, I was going to say, can I fail and take the class again?
Well, you can take the class again. I mean, there's no grade for it. So, because I am actually running this class again, starting, I want to say the 17th of April. I'd have to look at the dates. So what I'm doing is the people who are on the waiting list, I've given them first right of refusal. And so what I'm going to do is I'll just send out, like, April 1st will be open enrollment. I mean, I'm happy to have you in class again if you so choose. That would be okay too. So that said, let us get to work. So kind of, we have the 2 last class periods. And so this class period, I'm going to show you the video on like linings and finishing and all of that. And so I think it was Aaron that asked about the hidden lining pocket and the piped, the piping. So I had a student in my evening class ask me the same thing. And there are a lot of things with these videos. I just, there are things I know and I've written about and all of that. And it just kind of, I'm not terribly sentimental about these things, and so it kind of falls off my plate, and I don't think about it. So I thought, I had to do it for them. So next class, you all are going to get it. It's like a 40-minute video. It's like, how to use piping and how to draft the pattern and how to put the thing in. So yeah, I just figured that's just fair. If they get it, it's here. I might as well. It's kind of a last class. And then if anyone has their coat, they can, they want to show me, that would be fine. Because one of the things I've learned with this whole COVID thing is that it doesn't occur to me like how much I've written and how much stuff is in kind of my back catalog. One thing is, I don't know if you can see this bag here, but this is not for public consumption because we haven't made the deal yet. But some while ago, I made a couple of bags out of Fortuny fabric. Last week I got this email from Mickey at Fortuny. Hey, would you like to talk about putting those bags in production? I'm like, wow, that's and so what I was saying is, okay, this is going to be a shit ton of money. Quite frankly, we want to price these like Birkin bags because it's, the challenge is the hardware and all. And so we're going to go into talks. We may or may not. And because I was thinking about the Gladstone bag, and he said, well, there was a duffel. I remember a duffel. I'm like, duffel. And as I was talking to him, I was kind of looking up in my stash, and there it was. It's like, I totally forgot that. I'd completely forgotten that I made that bag. And so with this piped pocket, that was another one that kind of fell off the radar. But yes, so that will be next week. So any questions before we start the lesson? Okay, then let us start the lesson so we can get to work. Is that me or is that someone else? Okay. So again, as usual, don't be shy. Ask questions. That's what I'm here for. So. I've completed the final fitting. So what I want to do now, I've checked the sleeve length against her arms, and I need to adjust a little bit. So the chalk mark is her sleeve length. So before I turn this cuff up, I want to thin out these seam allowances to about 1/4 of an inch so that you don't have two seam allowances the same width sitting on top of each other. And I will do the same here. Okay. The next thing I want to do, I have cut bias strips 2 inches wide in the canvas. So what I will do then is actually pin them this way. Here we are. Pin them so you slip the cut edge up against the seam line, and I'm going to pin. So we're going to put the cut edge on our chalk mark. There we are. And pin all the way around. This is just going to reinforce a slight bit. Sometimes, depending on the fabric, I would use this because the fabric is thick. If it were a thinner fabric, like a wool gabardine or something like that, you could use a coating fabric, wool flannel, not carved in stone that you have to use the tailoring canvas all the time. So that now I want to cut this off. slip that end under the seam allowance. There we are. Okay. So the next step will be sewing to the top of the cuff. I'll go get a needle and thread and return. I'm back, and really, you just sew this with a running stitch about 3/16 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch below the cut edge on the wool. As you can see, I'm using a contrasting thread. You will not see this in the final garment.
And that's a doubled thread, Kenneth?
Yes, all
Yes,
the way around.
I tend to like a double thread. If for no other reason, then it doesn't come unthreaded as I'm sewing.
All right, thank you.
Opposite side and bring back the results. Okay. That's finished. And we remove the pins. The next step will be turning this up. So it's really a simple matter of folding it on that cut edge. And I like to fold it at each seam first and then work around. If you get the seams folded, here we are, it's folded on that cut edge. You can do that somewhat by feel and somewhat by sight. In there. Here and here. The next step will be tacking. Next, we tack the hem allowance up onto the seams. We don't hem this all the way around. It's just a little thread tack. Because the lining itself is going to hold the rest of this hem allowance together. The lining along with the bias strip that we have used to sew it in. So let's trim that. So this is just a bar tack. It's not pretty. It doesn't have to be. It's inside the lining. And on the top seam, turn this over. And really, we're just going to catch the canvas and catch it to the seam. We don't have to nail this down to withstand gale force winds. We just want it to secure the lining. Like I said, will hold everything else in place. So there you have it. And remove the pins. There we are. And I'll turn this right side out and meet you at the pressing table. Now at the sleeve board on the pressing table, you don't have to give this a hard press, but you do want to steam it. And there we have the cuff. ready for the lining. Now, back to the work table. Next, we install the shoulder pad. Now, when I did the fitting for my client, when I placed the shoulder pads, I found that the top end of the shoulder pad ended up about 1 3/8 of an inch from the stitching line. You could use that as a number to sort of guide yourself. Now, there where my thumbnail is, that is the seam. And so you match that to the seam. And then needle and thread, let's just check. Oh, there's a little bit here. So you match that. And with your needle and thread, you can come in and just catch this with a few stitches. Just catching seam allowance, not going all the way through. There is attaching it at the top. Once you've secured it at the shoulder, you just want to walk this down. I have marked, this is the middle of the shoulder pad. That's how you get that mark. You just fold it in half. So you walk the seam down so that there's the seam, there's the mark. And you want to tack this end sort of like you tacked the cuffs. You just want a loose tack that holds everything together. And again, it doesn't have to be pretty, it just has to be there. You're just catching the seam allowance and the shoulder pad. There we are. Secure that. So we have this end of the shoulder pad and this end secured. From here, I'm going to turn this right side out. You want to smooth the fabric over the shoulder pad on both sides because we want to attach the two ends, the end corners, with thread chains, but we want to make sure everything here is nice and smooth, and then we'll turn it back inside out for the next step. So this is where we're at. Next, thread chains. What we want to do here is to attach this corner to the nearest seam. So what we're going to make is what's called a thread chain. Now the thread chain, let me zoom in here so you can see it. On the thread chain, take a stitch and take another stitch, which will create a loop. From here, you're going to reach in. This is a chain, it's like a crochet. So what we're doing here is reaching through the loop to grab the thread. And I'll pull out here for a moment just so you can see it a little better. There we are. You keep a little tension on this side, but you're making a crochet. If you crochet, this is just a simple chain stitch. And so you're...
So Kenneth, are you using a heavier thread there?
Yes, I use the Mara 30. It's a little easier to manage. You could use a top stitching thread or a buttonhole thread as well.
Thanks.
A tack, somewhat like a swing tack, not as elegant, but if it's on the inside where you won't see it because there's a lining, it's strong
and quick to make. Okay, give 2 or 3 more. So you want it long enough so that you have a little bit of play when you attach it to the shoulder pad. So now that you have made the chain, to close the chain, you're going to put the needle through the loop. That locks the chain. And finish, you just come here and you will sew the other end of this chain to the corner on the shoulder pad. So the beauty of this is it attaches your shoulder pads down, but it doesn't weld them in place. It gives you a little range of motion, which is what you want. So that's a thread chain. Now I will work off camera to create the other thread chain, and I will bring back the results.
So Kenneth, do you do this chain anytime you put in a shoulder pad?
Well, for a Raglan, yes. For a set-in sleeve shoulder pad, it installs quite a lot differently. On a set-in sleeve shoulder pad, I generally sew the edge that goes into the armhole with a running stitch, and then I would catch stitch all the way around the perimeter of the pad. So it's a completely different installation. But with this particular pad, you really don't want to catch stitch it to the back side of the fabric because it could leave a trace. So having it tacked at the 4 different corners, it secures it, but at the same time, it doesn't draw attention to the joins. Did that make sense?
Yes, thanks.
Oh, okay.
And here we have the shoulder pad installed. We have the tacks here and here. And as you can see here, we have thread chain and thread chain. There's the tack. So the shoulder pad is now secure inside the coat. Our next step is to prepare the lining. When we were constructing the lining, we pressed up the cuffs by 3/8 of an inch. And so what I did also at the hem is also to press the hem up by about 3/8 of an inch. This is going to make it easier to finish. The final hand sewing is going to be the hem. So really, what we're doing now with our coat is pinning the lining into the coat. We'll be pinning right sides together. This is the shoulder seam on the coat facing. This is the shoulder dart on the lining. You match those two together and pin. So I like to match both shoulders and pin towards the center. So there is the other shoulder seam on the facing, and let's find the dart on the lining. There is the dart on the lining that matches to here, right sides together. Here, we will pin towards the center back. And I like to sneak up on it. I like to pin a little bit on one side and pin a little on the other. Now we're going to sew this in by machine, just so you know where we're going. This, like I said, this is not a totally bespoke coat. If you want to put it in by hand, by all means, but really with all the other handwork, throwing this in by machine is not criminal. And so yes, we keep working towards the center. And this is where the pleat comes in. I've had people ask me, how deep is the pleat? What happens is that wherever it overlaps, that's how deep your pleat is. And so it's going to, there's the center back here. I will just put a pin right there. And then this, voila, all the center backs match up. Isn't that wonderful? Now, if you want to baste all this before you machine it, all good. I probably will, just because I don't want to dodge around the pins. So, to begin, we've matched the shoulder seams of the facing with the shoulder darts on the lining. From here, it's a simple matter of just matching the cut edges and pinning this all the way down to the hem. I'm not going to make you watch me pin the whole thing. When we get closer to the hem, I will show you there's a little move that I like to do. Okay, so we're getting close to the hem. Now this is, zoom in a little bit here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to match that cut edge with the folded edge on this little binding. Because what you're going to do is you're going to fold this back so that you have about 3/8 of an inch from this fold to your stitching line. Let me show you, kind of pull it out a little bit so you can see kind of where this is going. Because when this turns right side out, you'll have a fold right there. So you're going to sew, machine it all the way to that point there. Now, I'm going to pin the other side. I will then go hand baste this, and I will bring back the results. And so again, 3/8 of an inch from the seam, you turn it back, and I'm going to baste everything down to the edge. And from here, after I tie this off, I will take this over to the machine to sew. It's not something you really need to see. You just sew this on the machine at 1/2 inch. I will bring back the result. So here we have the lining sewn to the facing. The next step really is to press all of the seam allowances towards the lining. That's what we'll be doing on the sleeve board here. So give it a start. So here we are. I won't make you watch me press the entire thing, but all of the seam allowances press towards the lining. So I will work all the way around and bring back the results. Now we're finished. Starting to look like something. Back to the work table. Now, before we turn everything right side out, we want to secure the center back of the facing to the seam and also the shoulder seam here with the shoulder seam here. I will make the same thread chains. So shoulder seams, center back. I will sew the thread chains and bring you back the results. So here we have the 3 thread chains, 1 at the center back, and 1 each at the 2 shoulder seams. Now we can turn all of this right side out. So here we have the lining turned right side out. I have also gone ahead and pushed the sleeve linings into the sleeves. Now this is where we do all of our final finishing. Now to secure the lining, this is the intersection of the side seam and the raglan seam on the body and on the lining. So a little thread chain, make that about 3/4 of an inch to an inch long. You want those to be secure on both sides because then that will keep the lining pretty much situated in place. The next step is
Can I ask a
Yes,
to pin
question?
the
sure.
cuff.
Yes.
Just to clarify, those last 2 thread chains are at the underarm
That's
where
correct.
the
Yes.
2 raglan seams?
Right. The 2 raglan seams intersect with the side seam arm seam.
Okay, that's what I thought you said. I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Other questions before we continue? Okay.
On the lining with the cuff on the coat. And this I will sew with a felling stitch. You could sew it with the slip stitch, but it's obviously a hand stitch. I will go off camera and sew this and bring back the result. We're coming around to the end here. I'm using the felling stitch. And once we secure the thread, the sleeves will be finished. Okay then. There we are. Now, one other little thing. This is going to form a jump pleat. So you want to just give a little bit of pull. You want the fabric to fall down and fold back up a little bit. So what I'll do is I'll give that a little bit of steam, but that little extra in there, that is your jump pleat. You want a jump pleat in sleeves as well as the body because you don't want to take any risk of the lining pulling the garment from underneath. So from here, we're going to the hem. And finally, we pin the hem. So I've matched this up at the center back. Show you what I'm doing here. The object is that these 2 cut edges match. So you just overlap that enough to hide the stitching that you hemmed the coat with. So you match at the center back. You also match at the side seam here. There's the side seam. Yeah, there we are. There's the side seam there. And then as you're moving along here, you do this as far over as you can. Trim that off there, because I don't want that hanging out. That will peek out later, sure as you're born. And so then here, you just want to bring this, I'd say, within an inch or so of the edge where the lining joins the facing. And then this, that little seam allowance, you can trim down. You don't need that anymore. So as the sleeve cuff, so the hem, I will stitch this down with a felling stitch, bring it back, and show you the result. We're almost at the end. And again, you want to stop this about an inch or so from the facing. And let me just secure the thread. There is one more little move that we need to do. But first, just give you a look at that. Eventually drape over that. And then you want to just slip stitch that little piece to the hem allowance. We'll just cause it to lay flat. Not too many stitches, you just want to tack it down. So there you are. Next, we'll go over to the pressing table to steam this down. And the final finish on the hem is put in the jump pleat. Now, you're going to have about 3/8 of an inch to 1/2 inch from the fold to the hem, but you don't want to put a crease. You just want to do this. That's all you want to do. You don't want a sharp crease there. But there you have it. You have your jump pleat built in to your lining. Now that we have the lining installed, it's really a matter of sewing on the buttons now. When
So, Kenneth,
Yes.
one question.
Yeah.
So you just gave it a steam and a hand press
Yes. You don't want
on that hem?
Yeah, you don't want to put
Okay.
a crease there. Now, the reason for that, this may seem like an obscure reason, but it's something I have encountered. I have made jackets in the past where the fabric is a little bit spongy. And if I've sat in it too much, what happens is the back will stretch a little bit. And so if you have a crease, you're going to see the crease. If you just have a roll, the jacket can relax a little bit. It's going to use up some of the jump pleat, but it won't draw attention to itself because there's no hard crease there.
Okay, thank you.
I know that
Got
sounds like an obscure thing, but it's something I've seen. So it's
No, it makes sense. That
Yeah.
makes sense. Okay, thanks.
So Other questions?
I have a
before-
question.
Yes.
So for that very reason, have you ever like, completely bagged a lining where I mean, I see so many patterns where they're doing it edge to edge.
What do you
It's
mean?
just basically like a,
Line it to the edge?
yeah, I mean, I've seen patterns like that. And I know a lot of people that want to do that. They just want to, I just feel like unless they're exactly the same kind of fabric, it never works.
Okay, I'm gonna go on my rant about bagging a
Do
lining.
that. That's what I want to know.
Yes, you see, that is, there are all these people and there are articles and people going on and on about bagging a lining. My first response is, if you want ready to wear, it's cheaper to buy it. And I'm pretty good. I sew pretty well. I have never had a bagged lining that's turned out. They say, oh, it takes less time. Well, actually it doesn't, because after I've done it, I've gone through all the nonsense about bagging the damn lining. Then I have to take it out and put it in by hand because it works better. And so, I understand, there are people who think that ready to wear is the standard they should hit because I guess that's, I don't know. Anyway, I have never had any success bagging a lining. I go for, this may seem like a lot of work. And, next week when I show you like putting the piping in and all that, that seems like a little more work. But you know what? For me, it's a lot less work than bagging the lining, than having to take it all out and then having to reinstall it by hand. So that's my little rant on bagging a lining.
Thank you.
I've never seen it, I mean, again, yeah, if you want ready to wear, go buy ready to wear. If you're able to, or if you want to wear a ready to wear finish, yeah, it's cheaper. Buy ready to wear. Okay.
It's just, sometimes it's just kind of fun to tell customers, I would not do it, and here's why I would not do it. And
Yeah.
then they still argue with you. And then you say, well, Kenneth D. King says.
Yeah.
And then they shut up.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that, because really, honestly, and I'm just gonna go on another little rant for a moment. There is so much information that is out there in the body of knowledge sewing wise. And, I hear this, well, I saw online that you should ... And a lot of times, when I hear it, because see, I'm willing to, like, I'm always up for learning something new. If I can get a better result, I'm there. But there are times that I'll hear about these techniques that just because you can doesn't mean you should. And that's what I'll say. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. I have done this for, professionally for, easily 35 years. And part of what I do, and this is something I teach my students at FIT, especially the couture techniques. There are other ways of getting all of these different techniques that you see that I'm teaching. But for me, what I have found is this is repeatable and reliable and takes less time because you only have to do it once. You don't have to rip anything out. You just do it, you move on to the next step. And so, yeah, so, use my name whenever possible, because, there are just certain things out there that, you read it and, well, I read it in here, I read it over there, I saw it online. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And
Thank you.
okay. So other questions, other questions before we sew the buttons on? Okay.
Kenneth, I have a question. If you're not going to do bound buttonholes, when do you do the machine buttonholes?
Actually, you notice the buttonholes are in now. I had the buttonholes put in before I installed the lining.
Okay.
Because see, that's something you can safely do. You could wait until the lining's finished, but why? Because that way they don't have to wrestle any more fabric than necessary.
Okay.
And
Thanks.
you no doubt are familiar with Jonathan's in New York, right?
Yeah, I've heard about it. I wish we were here in Boston.
Do you have a place like that there?
I wish.
This is when I tell people, like, if you really, 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 want something that looks good, fly to New York, have your buttonholes done. But really, I mean, it's a perfectly beautiful keyhole buttonhole. They have different styles of keyhole buttonholes you can choose, and it's $1 a buttonhole. And people say, do you do your own buttonholes? Absolutely not. I go up to 38th Street, 7 buttonholes, probably 7 minutes, and I'm back on the subway home, and they turn out perfect every time.
That's a great excuse to come to New York.
See, there you go. Okay, so let us finish this up.
You can make it so that the cuff lies flat or it draws it up a little bit. I rather like a little bit of drape. So this button I placed 2 inches away from the seam. You can vary that to your wrist, but for my particular client, this drape is what we're looking for. So that's how to position the button for the cuff latch. Now, for the fronts, this may seem obvious, but I didn't know it for the longest time. How you place your buttons, you line up the lower edge, and then you can come in here and just pin the 2 edges together in 2 or 3 places. And then, with your pin, find the end of the buttonhole.
I'm going to stop for a moment, run that back for just a teeny bit. Look at that button hole. Let me run this. There's a good close-up because this, you know, I don't get commission from Jonathan's, but boy, if you can do it.
Then,
look at that buttonhole. Is that not a thing of beauty? Makes my heart sing.
with your pin, find the end of the buttonhole. The pin emerges here. And that is really the easiest way to figure your buttonhole placement. Once you've determined the placement, because you want that right at the end of the buttonhole, where it emerges over here is where you sew your buttons on. I will sew the buttons off camera, take out the basting, and return with the results. And here we have the finished coat. I have it all buttoned up right now. I'll give you a view of the inside in a moment. There, the cuff latch, you can see the pockets and the fronts. So all of the basting's taken out, all of the pressing is finished, and it's ready for delivery. Now that we've reveled in the beauty of the outside, let me open it up and let you look at the lining. And here is the lining. You can see it joins the facing at the center back. Again, those are our well pockets. It creates the jump pleat at the hem. So there it is. I truly hope you've enjoyed this class. It's been quite a lot of fun making this coat.
It's a thing of beauty. It is just gorgeous.
Well, thank you. You know, and she was thrilled. She specifically wanted a label. I said, okay, that's fair. And I don't like to put the label at the top at the neck. I think that's too obvious. So if you look at vintage coats, you know, from like the 50s, they generally had the label on the facing, one of the front facings. I just think that's a lot more elegant. Yeah. So questions?
Where do you get your labels, Kenneth?
Well, you know, God, these labels I've had for 100 years, but there are places online actually email me that question, because I had to make, I don't know if you kind of follow me on Instagram, but I have the little teeny, 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 tiny Kenneth D. King label for the Barbie clothes that's woven. And that place, they did a very good job. I was very happy with them. So email me and I could actually, send that as a class email if anyone's interested in
Yeah,
getting
I want to know
it.
too.
It was not
Yeah.
a lot of money.
I
It
would love
really
to.
wasn't. It was
Yeah.
turnaround time was very good, not a lot of money. And see, my whole thing was I wanted it as small as I could get it. And they really did get something that was maybe the finish width was a 1/2 inch, maybe. So it's
Wow.
good and quick. Okay, so other questions? I feel like I should be like doing some comedy right now or anything, because so next week, like I said, next week is going to be the piped pocket, the lining with a piped hidden lining pipe pocket, which
Is this the one from the Cool Couture book?
yes,
Ooh,
there's a
I'd
little
love to
it's,
see you do
it's
that.
different. The shape of the
Okay.
pocket is different, because one of the things that in working with this, I realized that if I made the pocket a different shape, I wouldn't have quite so much bulk below the opening.
Mm.
So this, and I go into, here's piping, here's, here's how you make the piping, here's how you install the piping. So it's kind of a lesson on piping as well, because
Oh,
this
that'll be
student
lovely.
wanted a lesson on piping, and you need to know, because there's with the foot that I use, position 1, position 2, I figure, okay, it's good to have that lesson in there. And then we went into, here's the pattern making, and then here's the construction, and then here's how you sew everything to the facing of the garment. So it's it's about 40 minutes, just to warn you, but it's yeah, so that I figured that would be kind of a
So-
nice big finish, because Aaron asked about it, and so I thought, well, why not, because other people wanted it, so you can too. So
So if you wanted, if you wanted to put a pocket in the coat, is that what you're
in the
doing this for? Is
in
it
the lining,
in the lining? So how far along in the construction would you be to?
since you would be
So it's like
sewing,
once.
well, you would be sewing the lining in by hand about this stage. Instead of sewing it in by machine,
Okay.
you'd be sewing it in by hand. So you would construct you would be putting the piping on the lining. You would install the hidden lining hidden pocket into the lining. Then the lining would go into the coat. So,
Okay.
but
Okay.
as far as installing into the coat, it kind of installs the same. It's just by hand instead of machine.
Okay.
Slip stitch.
Okay.
People ask me, why do you actually, let me go get a coat and I'll show you what it looks like.
So I once had a man's suit tailored for my size, and the number of pockets inside of that jacket, I felt so angry. I had been denied this my entire life. I told people I felt like Batman, because I just had there were I want to say 5 pockets just throughout this jacket coat.
Yeah. So
This
here
is-
is, yeah. So,
Oh, it's just beautiful.
and so
Oh,
Isn't that fun? Look at that.
okay, now I'm going to tell you why ladies' jackets don't have so many pockets. And this is something I think, Julie, you probably would agree with me on this. In Diana Vreeland's autobiography, she talks about when in her early days at Harper's Bazaar, she got this big idea that I'm going to have an issue, a feature on pockets, big pockets, decorative pockets. You can put your comb in this pocket. You can put your compact in that pocket. And you don't have to spoil the line with a handbag. And they hauled her into Carmel Snow's office and said, lady, it's the handbag manufacturers that are paying your salary. So you're going to stand down on this. And that, I really truly believe, is why ladies' jackets in ready to wear don't have pockets, is they want you to
Well,
keep the bag.
people say, they suggest it has to do with the line, but if you put the pockets in the right place, they don't spoil anything.
No, because what I talk about in the drafting is I like to put the opening, and this is something that, see, when I lived in San Francisco, I shared studio space with a painter named Marshall Crossman. And she's not a girly girl. She's a modern woman. She's not dainty or picky or prissy or anything. She's just a modern woman. And so whenever I was coming up with something, I would, give the prototype to her and just watch her interact with it. And there was this one wrap that I did, and it ended up that the opening was for the pocket was up here, where that meant that the compact hit right there. And she said, no woman is going to
I'm
wear
not
that.
gonna do that. Yeah.
And so what I learned from that is that the opening of the pocket is at the bust, so that the contents can settle in the space below the bust. So that nonsense about, oh, it spoils the line is just that, it's nonsense. So yes. So
We
the
teach
hidden
it.
pocket, yeah.
Yeah, Elizabeth teaches a class on pockets. She just calls it Thanks It Has Pockets, showing people how to add pockets. It's almost always full.
Yeah.
And it's just, and the number one thing I hear when brides are looking for dresses, if it has pockets, they're gonna buy it.
I think
Yeah.
people love side pockets because you can put your hands in there and swish around, and Claire McCardle, who I study, was very big. Everything she ever made pretty much had pockets.
Yeah.
Either side pockets, but she also made them big decorative pockets in the front or in the hip where you could just shove your hands but you could carry your comb and your Mad Money and things like that.
Well,
She
that's what
Plus, you need
that's what she even
someplace-
said in her book, was that hands gave you someplace to put or pockets gave you someplace to put your hands, so you didn't feel so vulnerable, which I thought was a
Yeah.
really
Yeah,
interesting.
but she was very shy.
Plus, you need someplace for your lipstick.
Yes.
It's
Well,
someplace for your lipstick, your hanky.
or donations. My husband did 5 productions for Beverly Sills when she was at City Opera. And so, he got to go to all of the big openings with these productions. And she always, all of her evening gowns, she liked a particular style with, fitted bodice, big full skirt, because it looked good on her. She always had big pockets in her skirts, so that if someone wanted to discreetly hand her a check for another production, all she had to do was just tuck it in her pocket. She didn't have to open her bag or anything.
Oh,
The other thing
nice.
she never did was she never ate at any of these functions, for 2 reasons. One, if you're eating something, a photographer could catch you with a strange look on your face. She said also, if someone wanted to come up and talk to her and possibly bring a check, she could talk to them. But yeah, pockets. So the idea that ladies' clothes don't have pockets because it spoils the line. Also, it cuts down on production costs, because every pocket you put in, that adds to the cost. So yeah, there's no real
It's
reason.
amazing to me though how if they're gonna put a pocket in, they put this teeny tiny pocket and you can hardly put a quarter or a dollar bill in it.
It's true. Yeah. So what I talk about when I'm drafting it is, okay, because my students ask me this question, well, professor, how big do we make it? I say, okay, you have these things at the end of your arms called hands. And if it's going to be a pocket that you're going to be putting your hand into, it should be kind of that big. And it's kind of, yeah, and the placement, this is a question I get, is how, for side pockets, how far down? And generally the opening generally is 6 inches, it's a good generous size, 7 inches for men. It should be about 3.5 inches from the waist. Because if you think, like, where is it going to be comfortable so you don't have your arm kind of looking like a chicken wing? Where would it be comfortable when you put your hand in your pockets for your hands to land? That's where the pocket should be. And see, that's the beauty of actually making clothes for yourself, because you can have the pockets as many as you wish, and you can place them wherever you wish. Okay, so questions. I feel like I've run out of material today, but
Is it too early to ask when the jeans class is gonna be?
yeah, because the next class I'm working on right now, I'm running another coat class just because, I have a lot of people saying, I feel like I really wanted to be in that class. And so I'm running another one. That's also going to buy me time, because the next class I'm working on is the lace jacket.
Mm,
And so, timing wise, that will be kind of in the summer.
okay.
So that you can start, because you can start preparing for any special events that you're going to be going to in the fall. And so I have a I have a friend who's going to be, I said to her, if you buy the lace, I'll let you have the jacket. So, I'm making this for someone because what do I need with another lace jacket? I have one already, so I don't need another.
So do you have a pattern you're going to recommend for the
Yes.
lace jacket? Because I might work on fitting that now.
Yes, and see, and so what
Great
I've
idea,
done,
Sherry.
I just sent it off. It's the same pattern I made this one out of, and it's also, it would be a good candidate if you were going to be making one of those French jackets. It's a,
Mhm.
it's a princess line front and back. It's a 6-piece. It has, it has a sleeve with the seam down the center. The comment that this friend of mine made was, I really, it's trim, but I feel like I can move in it.
Mhm. So
So
is that a pattern you made?
yes, I came up with the pattern. And so I just sent it off to sewing and design
Okay.
school because, someone said, well, why don't you sell the patterns? Like, cause I'm lazy.
Mhm.
I'm going to be honest here. I don't want to mess with getting it graded, getting it and shipping
Mhm.
all of them. So, like this coat class, you know, and see, also I like her. I've done business with her for well over 20 years and I want her to stay in business.
Mhm.
And so, I contacted her and said, if I just send you the pattern, will you produce it? She said, yeah. So, because see, one of the things I learned with Craftsy, there was the coat class, which was a fun
Mhm.
class. And I was trying to make it so that all of the instructions for modifying the coat pattern could translate. But some people, they're very literal, they need the actual pattern. And so what I wanted to do with this class and what I want to do with the lace class is I want a pattern that everyone has. It's an easy pattern. I've worked out the fit on the sleeve. It's always going to be in print as long as I do this class. So
So
that's
would you let us know when it's available? Because I'd really like to work on the fit.
Yeah.
So I have something that's really close by the time the class starts.
Yeah, like I said, I sent her the pattern yesterday, and so I will
Perfect.
email her and say, I have people, because see, also my friend Linda Maynard is working on a class on knits, in case anyone here likes to sew with knits. And I said to her, well, what about a knit jacket out of Ponte? And so she's also going to be using the same pattern for her class because it's just easier because the whole thing about sorting through, okay, Berta has this or Vogue has that, they might not have it when I'm ready to do this class again, and so it's kind of a pain in the neck. So having everyone have the same pattern, I think, it takes one less variable out of the mix. So yeah, I will email to everyone, okay, it's ready, so you can go get a copy.
Plus, the other thing I find is if you give them choices, dollars to donuts, at least one person's going to come with a pattern that is totally off the wall and not workable and not want to do it.
Yeah,
It just,
that
Come on.
reminds me of a student I had at FIT, and he was a challenge on so many levels, and he thought he was really hot stuff, but really he wasn't. And he thought he was hot stuff because he worked in alterations at David Bridal. I was like, okay, if you worked at Kleinfeld's, I'd be a little impressed, but David's Bridal, I don't think so. And yeah, his whole thing was basically taking too big a bite and then not being able to produce. And he was just one of those that I just gave him a D just to get him out of my class. No, seriously, it was like, I'm not going to go to the whole story, but it was just a tooth and nail. And I remember one night in class, he said, well, you just want to do it. You just want us to do it like you say. And I'm like, yes, I'm the professor and I'm going to be grading that. And I'm showing you how I want it done. And if you don't want to do it that way, I'm not going to turn myself inside out to make you.
Why are they taking the class if they're gonna be mad that you?
No, well, but again, I think he thought he was hot stuff and he thought he should be teaching the class. And before it was over, it was the couture collection at the end, and you had to come up with 3 pieces. All semester, this kid is just sitting there talking with his friends. And I'm like, dude, this is due Thursday, May, whatever, at 7 in the evening. And so the Tuesday before he starts cutting it out, I said, you do understand that this is due at 7 o'clock on Thursday. Oh yeah, I'll power through it. Well, he didn't get it done. and we had a big knockdown drag out in the hall. And my students don't normally hear me yell because I don't think that's a good thing, but I was so frustrated that, and he was, he kind of went into this like, because apparently he was getting funding from somewhere and he was afraid that if he failed, then he'd lose his funding. I said, oh, I will see to it that you get a passing grade because I never want to see your face in my class again.
Do you think he was influenced by like reality shows? Like he thought it was normal to finish a garment in 24 hours,
I
or?
don't know. I don't care. I think he was a little bit crazy. Because you see, they can't say at FIT, they have, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and I think that's a very good thing. But what I've had, it was with another student who it was another long story that I won't go into, but I met with the people, they call it fitable, FIT-able. Isn't that cute? And so I met with the guy during this, in the middle of this whole thing, and it was really interesting because we're both sitting there, being very civilized and all this. And he said, "Well, let me tell you about Fitable and the Americans with Disabilities Act." He said, it deals with disabilities that are physical." And then he just kind of paused and he said, "or mental." And I went, okay. And so, you have to work around this, and in that particular case, and I think this was one of those where, you're dealing with people who are not necessarily all there. And, so you have to give them the best chance possible. But for me, the whole thing was, I don't want to get mixed up in a whole other wrangle because I had learned from the last student who, before it was over, filed sexual harassment and age discrimination charges against me. And I was like, they called me on this, sexual harassment. I'm like gay as a tree full of kittens. I'm gay as a clutch bag on. And I just said, I don't know what to say.
I always learn new phrases whenever I talk to you.
Yes, I just like,
Gay as a
my
tree
friend
full of
Dory used to
kittens.
say, they can see that you're gay from satellite photos in space. I had students email from this class emailing me, and I would email them back saying, and the only thing I could really say was, I can't really discuss this with you. The thing I would tell you to do is answer their questions honestly. That's all you can do. And it eventually went away, but I learned my lesson. So people like that, I've learned, I can kind of see it coming, and I just do whatever I can to get them out of my classes.
Oh, yeah. Those people you can't deal with. We have someone at the Minnesota DNR, we have security cameras. She is convinced that we send the footage from the security cameras to about 7 people's cell phones so they can follow her and stalk her.
It's sad. It's really sad, and you can't do anything about it.
No.
So my whole thing is, I do what I can to make sure they learn. And, at the end, if I sense that, okay, this is who they are and this is where they're at, I just give them a D just to get them out of my hair. It's not fair, but okay, that's fine. Cause I just figure, hey.
Good plan.
Okay, so back to topic.
Hey, I talking about classes. This is sort of back to that.
Yeah.
Would you ever consider a class on making a fake fur or fake fur jacket or coat?
Yeah, I actually would, but before I take your money on that, there is a video Threads. I did a video with Threads. I can't remember the title of it. It was like Smart Sewing Fake Fur or something like that. So yeah, there is actual video out there that you could access. I'd be happy to run a class if there was enough interest. Absolutely. But I
think that would be.
I'm a little bit hesitant to basically put things out that kind of overlap with things that you might have paid money for before, because
Yeah, but it's so much more fun to have the real you right here.
Okay, well, let me look at that, because do I have enough fur coats yet? I have 22 fur coats. But
I want one.
That
would be a blast.
I explained there are city furs, there are country furs, there are dressy furs, there are sporty furs. Where
do you store them all in New York?
I have I don't pay to have stores. Someone asked me, like, that must cost you a fortune. No, for what I paid for these coats, no. I have a back, what I call the back closet, where they're all kind of packed in. And, you know, when the season comes, this year I didn't do it because, well, why? Because it wasn't going anywhere. I bring up the rolling rack from downstairs and I set up a rolling rack and I get out all my furs. And yeah, so yeah, I have so many clothes. Yeah, why not? Why not another fake fur? What the hell? Okay, so
And when you draft patterns for classes or for whatever, do you use like the moulage of a fit model, like the person that you're going to
I
make it for, or
me.
you use, oh, you make it for you?
Yeah, I'm about a size 12. You know, like this fits me. And you know, you know, in a men's, I'm like a 40 short, to give you kind of an idea of that. You know, I tend to assume that the people who want to make you know, who take my classes are not like that big. You know, we can grade it down to fit that, but I start with something that pretty much fits me and I go from there. If I were drafting for a client, I would start with their moulage and make their sloper and either adjust something, one of my patterns, like my go-to bolero jacket or whatever, to fit them. So those are two different ways of you know, if you're generating for one specific person, it works best to start with the moulage. If you are trying to fit a range of people, I found that, you know, of course, I'm increasingly being, you know, shaped like a hot water heater. But I find it tends to work better because if you need more shaping, that's easy enough to do. But if it fits up in the shoulders and you have enough lift on the sleeve, that is the thing I really am conscious about. You know, I did this article on Thread some years ago about, you know, cap height, bicep length, mobility, and appearance. And this is where I'm really fortunate that I studied with Simone, because Simone she pounded this into our heads that if you can't get your arms up, you're never going to wear it. If you can't do what you're going to do, you're not going to wear it. So the best way, and what she used to do, because we were kind of the same size, I was a little thinner then. She would, in class, she would put clothes on me. Here, put this on, see how this feels. And she was very big on the balance of a garment. The garment shouldn't feel like it's tugging you should just put it on and forget about it. It should just hang. And, you know, there were different ways that we learned to make that happen. And so I'm very conscious of, it has to just, it just has to sit. And you shouldn't have to think about it or tug at it or pull at it or adjust it. So I just find that you know, if I'm going to do something like this Raglan coat, I made it for me. And, you know, make it for me. And it tends to fit other people too. Long answer, but there you have it.
No, cool, thanks.
Okay, so other questions. Is it like a beautiful spring day for everybody?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I went out earlier. I had to send some packages out, and it's like in the high 50s, you know, and it felt like, oh, finally we're getting to be spring. Yes.
We're gonna have
So we're gonna
70 in
hit-
Minnesota on Monday.
Oh my.
Yeah, we're going to be in the mid 70s here today.
Oh, how that sounds
It's-
lovely.
It will be.
Well, okay. I've run out of other material for today. So, you know, got 10 more minutes. If you want to hang out, you can. If you have other things that you need to do, you can. I will be here, of course, until 1:30 because that's what I do. So, yeah, next week we're going to learn the hidden lining pocket and piping. And if anyone has their coats done, you can do a show and tell.
I'll be able to do a show and tell of the collar. That I'm confident I'll have
Well,
finished.
progress is progress.
I can also show my my sleeve latches. I'm actually really pleased with how those buttons turned out.
I was so impressed. I don't know if you all follow her on Instagram, but she did found buttonholes in her cuff latches. I was like, oh my God.
I did.
Yeah, I want to see those. I was so
Hey,
impressed.
I just finished turning them this morning, actually.
Anna, you had a question?
Yes, I do.
No,
On the
I just
cuff
want to
latch.
say,
The cuff latch is
okay, go ahead.
that thing on the sleeve.
Yes. How far back is the buttonhole?
The buttonhole, I think it's marked on the pattern, but
Okay,
yeah, if you look on the pattern, you should find it.
okay.
Okay.
So Kenneth, since I am so far behind, how much longer after the class are you going to have the videos posted?
Well, now the Zoom videos are going to last, I want to say, for 6 weeks. But now don't tell anyone this, because I want other people to pay for this class. Don't
Mhm.
pass around the YouTube links.
Mm-mm.
The YouTube links are going to stay for the foreseeable future.
Great,
So
great.
if you want to go back and refer, if you'd like to take the class again, yay. But I'm not, I mean, if you just want to use the videos to reference, if I start seeing evidence that the videos are ending up places where they shouldn't, then I'll take them down and reassign them. But until then, it's there.
I don't want to get banned for life from, taking
Oh.
your class.
Oh, I appreciate that. But you see, there are people, and I think the thing is, I operate from the people operate. Generally, they're doing the right thing, and so if you tell them the right thing, like on the front page of the PDF books, it talks about don't give this to someone else. There are some people who are going to do the wrong thing, but most people will do the right thing. And so in this case, don't pass around these links, and you'll do the right thing. I'm not worried. I like to think I don't attract, craven criminals to my classes.
No. Actually, I went back to look at the materials video
Uh-huh.
and I received a message that it was removed by the uploader.
That's weird.
Yeah, I couldn't, I tried several times and I couldn't access it.
Well, let me go back and look at that and check and see what's going on with that, because YouTube. Yeah. And
Okay.
and if I because I can see the beauty of this is I can download it again. So if I have to download it again, I'll send everyone the link just so everyone has it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So, other questions? Well, then class is dismissed.
Okay, thank you. Have a good weekend.
You too.
Thank you. Have a
Thank you
good
very
day,
much.
everybody.
Have a beautiful weekend.
Thanks.
Bye.
I leave. Oh, he was out here.
I have to figure out how to get out of here.
There's like a little thing that says end or leave.
Oh, okay, wait. I'm getting out of here. I'm just having a problem.
Technology isn't it?
Kenneth,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm so sorry that I was late and such.
It's okay.
We had
It's okay.
big rain yesterday and I'm sitting in our, back room and I'm thinking,